Hello there, my monster heads and metal fans. Welcome to another episode of Metal and Monsters. Now, I know it's been a few months since we were together, but we've been staying up super late into the witching hours to bring you another awesome show. Now, with this being the first ever Halloween episode, we thought we should call on somebody who's not only a monster, but a total metal maniac. Our guest today is the maestro of madness for a band called Metallica, and a patron saint of the horror community. That's right, you guessed it. The man himself, Kirk Hammett, will be with us tonight. We can't wait. Now, before we get into that, though, we gotta raise the dead with some tunes from the crypt. By the time Typo Negative entered the studio to record their fourth album in 1996, they had cemented themselves as the new kings of doom and gloom. With the release of October Rust, the band returned, trading in the industrial and punk bursts from the previous album and replaced it with a lush and layered texture that captured the sights and sounds of fall to absolute perfection. The album was darker and more melodic than the previous efforts, but also featured some of Peter Steele's greatest moments as a songwriter, with songs like Love You to Death, Die With Me, and Haunted. The album became one of my all-time favorites, and it's a seasonal classic that I play to death every October. While this record is out of print now, we have 4 copies of it to give away to you guys at home. So 3 lucky winners will receive a copy of the October Rust LP containing a really rad original press photo, and 1 lucky winner will receive an October Rust bundle containing the LP, the CD, a t-shirt, and an exclusive Typo Negative book from our good friends at Revolver Magazine. For your chance to win all this awesome stuff, all you need to do is send your name, email, and mailing address to Metal and Monsters. Attention, Tunes from the Crypt. That's at P.O. Box 70191, Pasadena, California 91117. The winners will be selected at random and announced on Gibson TV at a later date. And for all you Typo Negative fans at home, we have something very, very special planned for you. So be sure to stay tuned to upcoming episodes of Metal and Monsters because you do not want to miss this. Now, coming up next, get your trick-or-treat bags out because we are joined by the one and only Kirk Hammett. Stick around.
It's the battle of the mini-monsters. Introducing Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
The monsters with glow-in-the-dark features.
Frankenstein is in a foul temper. Dracula flies in, fangs bared. Creature surfaces, dripping with rage. Phantom shows his fiendish face. I can't look. Is he ugly? The monster battle rages on. It's a howl.
The monsters with glow-in-the-dark features, each sold separately from Remco. Never forget their voices.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Metal and Monsters, and have we got a special treat for you kids at home. I hope you're ready for this. Tonight we are joined by the one and only, the monster man himself, Mr. Kirk Hammett. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here, as always.
Well, I want to spend some time tonight talking about all the stuff we love. I would like to know your earliest monster memory.
My earliest monster memory would be around the time I was I think 5 years old. There's a little story that's wrapped around it too. I'd sprained my arm as a kid, a 5-year-old kid, went to the doctor and put my arm in a sling and told my parents, couldn't go outside and play, couldn't see my friends. So I just like sat in front of a television, started switching the channels, rotary channel switcher back in the day.
Yeah.
And I found a movie called Day of the Triffids, and it was the opening scene. And the opening scene is so provocative. And from that point on, I was just riveted, and I watched the entire movie, and I thought, this is way better than any of the cartoons or any of the Disney stuff, all the other fluff that I'd been watching, that was children's programming. And I just instantly knew that I wanted to experience this kind of story and this sort of scenario with this sort of feeling and emotion. It just so happened to be the horror sci-fi genre, but it just like grew from there.
Did you see a movie when you were young that actually did kind of scare you at all, or was?
Yeah, but all the classic horror movies scared me when I was a kid. First time I saw Dracula, I was scared. First time I saw Frankenstein, I was scared. The Mummy, I was scared. The Wolfman, all those movies scared me because I was really young when I saw them. I was like 6, 7 years old. I was alone in front of the television, and they were pretty impactful for me. I got into a habit of going to movie theaters a lot when I was younger, and I remember seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when it was a new film. And there was a buzz on the streets, everyone was talking about it. And I remember going to see it and truly being frightened, because there hadn't been a film like that up to that point that was so graphic and it's violent. It's just brutal, and its brutality. There wasn't anything like that. And I remember me and my friends just leaving the theaters, just shaking our heads going, wow. Just looking at each other going, did we just see that? It was a real experience. I saw The Exorcist when it first came out. I was too young to see it. I was a Catholic schoolboy, too. And so, I honestly thought after seeing that movie, and I saw most of it like this.
Right, yeah.
I honestly thought that the perpetrators of that film were coming after me next, because I was a Catholic school kid, and The Exorcist, the whole concept of the movie revolves around Catholicism and Christianity, and I felt vulnerable because of that, and I wasn't the only one. My friends and I would all talk about it, going, we don't want to get possessed. It's a real, honest to goodness fear when we were kids. Like I said, being a Catholic, it just went straight to the core of who I thought I was at that point.
I really relate to that. I had a strict religious Christian upbringing, and The Exorcist hit those kids differently.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah. Well, it pushes all the buttons inside of you if you're a Catholic. And I literally, for the next 4 months, slept with the light on, every night. Made sure my dog was right there.
Right. Yeah.
Don't get possessed, dog. Do you know about these fan edited movie sites where they take movies and friggin' edit them? It changes. Supposedly, the fan-edited version of Exorcist 3 is epic, including the decapitation scene. The saint with his head being decapitated.
One of my favorite sequels ever.
Yeah, it's a good one. The second one,
oof, we don't talk about
3 is
stellar acting, right? Just
great! I love it, and the premise is great too.
Yeah.
Exorcist 2. Oof.
Yeah. We
don't
talk about Exorcist 2.
Yeah. But Exorcist 3 is really, really great.
Chainsaw and Exorcist, I think, have both held up as still genuinely scary movies. I don't think they're any less shocking today than they were.
Well, the great thing about those two films is that they set precedents, and then there's a whole wave of copycat type films. And a lot of them weren't very good at all. Some of them were killer, You know, there were some killer films that came in the wake of The Exorcist. I don't know if I could say that as much about Chainsaw. It wasn't until like Halloween came out that you know, I thought, wow, this is like as great as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but different and totally like, you know, I could recognize it for the art it was, you know, rather than just exploitive or you know, jumping on some sort of bandwagon of some sort. That time was an interesting time for horror films too, because that's where horror films shifted and started to get more graphic, more violent, and involved, you know, the whatever that, you know, the evilness was, you know, had more involvement in the scripts in general, you know. But from 71 to 74, there was a lot of like really interesting movies that come out that really set the tone for the late 70s and into the 80s. But then, you know, I really think that there were a lot of great horror films in the 80s, but the genre kind of slumped out and kind of evened out, and just it was like this for a while in terms of like quality, creativity, originality. It was really just like feeding on itself and copying itself for a large part of the 80s. But, you know, in the 80s, you had great stuff that came out like Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, all the Jason films, Hellraiser, Reanimator. I mean, those are real significant films from the 80s that came out that were great. But then there was a lot of stuff that just was just awful, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it was equally as much good as there was bad, I feel like, in the 80s. Was film something that always interested you?
Yeah, I've always been interested in film, always been interested in movies. When I heard music, the pull was even stronger. Hearing the Misfits and then looking at the Misfits cover and going, hey, this is like an audio version of a copy of a Monster Mag, like, you know, and the Misfits logo. You know, that font was from Famous Monsters of Film, man. You know, turn over, look at the song titles. You know, I turned into a Martian. You know, this is the band for me. I understand where these guys are coming from. And I looked, you know, and then I realized these guys are total monster kids, you know, like I was. I didn't know what happened, but that just, it prompted me, like, literally, like, within that same week, just like, starting to collect again, like I used to when I was a kid, and getting back into the monster mags and all the, you know, the monster toys and artwork and just everything, you know, and full on, just right after Ride the Lightning.
Was the Misfits the moment when the peanut butter and jelly sandwich that is music and monsters came together for you, or was there something before?
Well, you know, horror and music came together with for me when I first heard Black Sabbath. And you know, it was quite a thing for me, because I remember I was 16 years old, and I was with a bunch of friends. We went out camping, and it was at night. We were around the campfire. Someone put on the first Sabbath album, and I'd never heard it before, and I actually got scared. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is like a horror movie. And, you know, it was all dark. There was a fire. Everyone got silent, and I was just listening to it. I actually felt scared. But Sabbath, you know, it was the first sort of like enmeshment of the two. I knew about Black Sabbath, and I knew that they'd gotten that title from a horror movie, a Boris Karloff horror movie, but I never really got around to listening to them. You know, I was into like Cream and Jimi Hendrix and you know, listening to like, you know, Pat Travers and UFO and like weird stuff like that, you know, Deep Purple. And I was making my way, and like eventually I would have eventually gotten around to Sabbath sooner or later, but it was a moment, because we were outside camping, and it was scary as fuck.
Did you actually end up seeing the Mario Bava Black Sabbath movie soon after that?
Yeah, I have the poster. You know, Mario Bava is one of my favorite directors. You know, Black Sunday, as I see your shirt. Black Sunday is one of the greatest horror films of the 60s.
It never gets old for me.
No.
I watch it every year.
And it's weird because if you watch it, there's so many things that have been stolen from that film. So many scenes. Yeah. Particularly Francis Ford Coppola stole a lot of scenes from Black Sunday that ended up in his version of Dracula.
Yes. On that note, we're going to take a break, folks. We'll be right back with more Metal and Monsters.
Hit Parader, America's #1 heavy metal magazine, presents the Heavy Metal Hotline. It's your chance to hear directly from superstars like Kiss, Dio, Anthrax, Ozzy, and Poison. They'll tell you their wildest tour stories and reveal secrets they've never told before. Plus, you'll hear the hottest metal news and gossip brought to you as only Hit Parader knows how. Catch the latest feuds and controversies on the Heavy Metal Hotline, your backstage pass to headbanger rock and roll. Call 1-900-660-METL. $1.50 the first minute, 35 cents each additional minute.
It's mail time. Who doesn't love mail? Now, in our first episode of Metal and Monsters, we brought you Fang Mail, the portion of the show where you monsters at home get to write in and share letters with me about your favorite bands, your favorite movies, or your favorite monsters. And what followed was something we weren't quite prepared for. The outpouring of love and support after the first episode was seismic, with the Metal and Monsters P.O. Box receiving over 500 letters from you maniacs at home. We received drawings, obviously letters, and some really cool surprises, like these packages of rock cards from the 90s. Did you guys collect these? They were like baseball cards for your favorite rock stars. Who didn't want an Angus Young baseball card? I mean, this was the coolest thing when I was a teenager. Ah, the dude. Testament, Eric Peterson, Riff Master. Check it out. John Tempesta with long hair when he was in Exodus. Hi, John. There's Tom Kiefer from Cinderella, rocking out. And you even got stickers with these packs, like this awesome Seasons in the Abyss artwork that pissed off every one of your teachers in school when you stuck them on your locker, which is always fun. So thank you guys for sending me some rock cards. Now this is from Riff, AKA Jason and Charity. Riff is an artist who addressed this nice and big so there'd be no mistake as to where it was going, and even drew a picture of me on the back, which is incredibly accurate. And he happens to be an incredible artist, so I thought we could share some of his artwork that we sent. Here's a picture of your buddy the Devil. Some pretty cool woodcut style artwork, and I love this one. This one might be my favorite. Beautiful work, Riff. Keep it up. Thank you for this beautiful artwork. Now, for every letter that's received, I promise to personally write you back and send you one of these brand new Metal and Monsters postcards, which have been designed by the legendary artist Ed Repka. You may know Ed Repka from such album covers as Peace Sells But Who's Buying, or Rust in Peace if you happen to be a Megadeth fan. You will get one of these back from us. So thank you to everyone who took time to mail something in. We cannot thank you enough for the support. You guys are awesome. Everybody, we are here with a very special Halloween edition of Terror Trek. Just for you monster kids at home, I am joined by the one and only Mr. John Murdy, the ringmaster of Halloween Horror Nights at the legendary Universal Studios. John, thanks for being here.
Thanks, it's great to have you guys.
Tell us a little bit about your role specifically here, like what your day-to-day job is.
Yeah, I'm the creative director, executive producer of Halloween Horror Nights here at Universal Studios Hollywood. And so I'm responsible for like the initial idea of every concept, and then to see it through in all the different phases of production. And I'm also the executive producer, so I work with some of the biggest filmmakers in Hollywood to bring their films to life at Horror Nights.
What is the lead time to put together a season for Horror Nights? Like, when do you start for next year?
Yeah, it's gotten to be about 18 months. So like in March of this year, we would start working on Halloween Horror Nights 2023 while we're still designing and at the beginning of production of this year's event. So it's a never-ending cycle of horror. It just goes on and on and on. For my time, I have 2 weeks from original like concept, watching the film or films or TV series, and then breaking it down, coming up with the idea with my partner, Chris Williams, who's my art director and production designer, and we design everything together and always have as a team. And then I have to write a treatment, and that could be 100 pages long by the time it's finished. And then,
oh my God,
pick up the next one and start doing that. So there's 8 haunted houses this year, so that's like making 8 movies at the same time.
You have to do that 8 times?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Okay, let's go all the way back for a second, because you gotta really, really love this stuff.
Yeah.
That's a massive amount of work.
Yeah, it's in your blood.
What was the movie where you were like, I'm a monster kid?
Frankenstein. It was Frankenstein. It was Universal Monsters, and I was watching Frankenstein one morning, and at the end of the movie, my mom came in and she found me crying on the couch, and she thought, oh my God, I've traumatized my son. But in reality, when she started asking me questions, she realized I wasn't afraid of Frankenstein. I just felt so sorry for him. Because at the end of the day, all of those classic Universal Monsters movies, they're like Shakespearean tragedies. I mean, all of these characters don't have a choice in what they're doing. Frankenstein didn't ask to be born. And even at 4 years old, I empathized with that. And from that moment on, I was a monster fan. And also Alice Cooper was my hero growing up. I used to write him letters when I was a little kid, and I was a card-carrying member of the Black Widow fan club.
Oh my God, incredible.
And then one day I got the opportunity to work with Alice. In 2011, we did a house based on his concept album, Welcome to My Nightmare. So to get to work with your idol, when you were a little kid, that's pretty cool.
So over the years, what were some of the biggest technical challenges that you were
Well, everything we do essentially at the end of the day is practical effects. It's like the way they used to make horror movies back in the 80s, and is coming back, a little bit in vogue now. But we're doing things mechanically. We're working with our engineers here at the theme park. For example, in our Horrors of Blumhouse maze, we have a section that's based on the film Freaky, and there's a scene where the shop teacher gets pushed through a table saw and split in half, and we do that live. Every 5 seconds all night long. So it's practical effects.
What are we going to see in the Universal Monsters maze tonight?
Yeah, this is our original take on the classic Universal Monsters, and this particular one, called Universal Monsters Legends Collide, brings together 3 monsters who, believe it or not, were never featured in a Universal classic monster movie, and that's Dracula, the Wolfman, and the Mummy. So what we did is we looked at the backstories of all of these characters and found a reason for them being in the same place at the same time.
What do you think brings people back here, and how does it keep getting bigger attendance-wise every year? What is the trick?
I think it's a rite of passage. It's become a rite of passage. Can I do this? Am I going to be able to do it? When you're waiting in line and you're hearing screams coming from inside here, and it's building up and it's building up. It's conquering your fears and stepping inside our world. That's a huge deal. And once you do it, it's like adrenaline. You want to do it over and over and over again. And then you want your friends to be a part of it. We're trying to make you feel like you're living a horror movie, like you walk through the screen and now it's alive and it's coming for you.
How scared do people actually get in these things? Have you seen people like this?
I've seen people drop on the ground and crawl out the exit, which is awesome. That means you're doing your job.
Now that I know you're an Alice Cooper fan, I get to ask this. What do you think it is about heavy metal and monsters that go so well together? Why do they both resonate with us so much?
I think that's Alice Cooper. I think he created it all. That rock and roll rebellion that's inside you, and it's the same thing. Getting to work with Alice and bringing Welcome to My Nightmare to life, that was my childhood dream come true. And I remember he said to me when we were making it, he goes, when I was making the album, I always thought there'd be a kid somewhere in a dark room with headphones on, imagining the movie that he would make out of my album. And I said, Alice, that was me. I was that kid. kid. I was that kid with the headphones on, listening to the 8-track of Welcome to My Nightmare. And look, I just brought it to life, and here it is. And the same thing with Black Sabbath, getting to work with them.
Oh, wow.
They got back together with Ozzy, and they did the reunion tour, and the album 13. We all worked together, and we took the whole library of Black Sabbath and brought it to life as a haunted house.
You guys have worked with Slash on the scores for several mazes. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it all started back in 2013. Slash came as a fan to experience Halloween Horror Nights for the first time. He said, I want to work with you. And I was like, really? Okay. Let me think about it and we'll come up with an idea. So in 2014, we did our first house called Clowns 3D, and it was an original story that I wrote. He did the music. And then when we started doing Universal Monsters, he came on board in 2018, and he's done every single one of them.
There's always been a musical component kind of to
it's
like
always
a
been
musical
somewhere,
tie-in with Alice and Sabbath, and
you
mentioned Zombie. There was a Rob Zombie.
Rob Zombie. We worked together on House of a Thousand Corpses, his films. It's always great to work directly with the artists themselves because they're the keepers of the flame of the passion of what they create. And we want to be equally passionate about what we create because that's how you end up with the greatest product.
What an incredibly awesome accomplishment. To understand the passion that goes into and the level of detail that you have to have that goes into this stuff is just so inspiring. John, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for
really
coming down.
Appreciate you. All right, kids, back at you in a second. Welcome back, Monster Heads. So, Kirk, I have to ask you, were you a Halloween kid? Did you get excited? Yeah.
Totally, completely, yeah.
You remember your first costume?
Yeah, you know, I was always sort of obsessed in trying to, like, you know, come up with a convincing Frankenstein makeup. I remember one year I used cardboard, and it actually worked pretty well.
To make the brow, yeah?
Yeah, to make the, you know, yeah. But yeah, even to this day, I'm still a big Halloween person. I love Halloween. Even to this day, I mean, it's one of the greatest holidays there is. I mean, it's like, that's my holiday. It's our holiday, you know, for all us horror guys, horror people.
You still get excited when I see the black and orange stuff go up in like August.
Oh,
you know, I'm like, there we go. We have to watch one movie tonight so it feels like Halloween. What is it?
Nosferatu.
Oh, good one.
That's like a great go-to, you know. I never get tired of watching that.
I don't either.
There's something about it, you know. It's so moody, so atmospheric, and I love it.
And I always notice something that I didn't notice before. Every time I've seen it, I've probably seen it 100 times, and I go, oh, I didn't notice that little thing.
Well, it's amazing because it seems like every 2 or 3 years a better print shows up. You know, and you can see more of it, or, you know, a print shows up with tints or something or other, you know, with the full orchestrational score. And so I just love that film.
An actor that was born to play a part.
Yeah. Shrek, Max Shrek. I mean, even his name sounds evil.
Menacing.
Yeah. And yeah, you see pictures of the guy and it's not that far. It wasn't that much of a stretch. All they had to do is put pointy ears on him and some fangs, you know. It wasn't that much of a stretch. Which brings me to another film, Shadow of the Vampire, which I thought was really, really great as well, you know.
Yeah. As
a concept.
Yeah.
Max Shrek being an actual vampire.
It's like the Ed Wood of monster movie.
It's a revision that's informative in its own way.
That'd be a good double feature tonight. Let's do that.
Yeah.
I can watch Ed Wood any day of the week.
Yeah, I actually like Ed Wood quite a bit as well.
That's in my top 10.
Yeah.
Where do you see your monster influence in Metallica's music?
When I first joined the band, I mean, I was surprised because I walked in one day and I saw Cliff Burton reading a Call of Cthulhu Dungeons and Dragons sort of like, you know, rule book. And I'm like, I know that book. I played that game. You're into H.P. Lovecraft? He goes, yeah, it's Cthulhu, man. And I was like, it was like a huge sigh of relief because it's like, right on, man. I thought to myself, he's into horror stuff too. I have a fellow, a fellow brother. Cliff Burton's favorite film of all time was Dawn of the Dead.
Wow.
And he just loved the helicopter scene with the zombie,
Yeah.
I remember just watching that over and over and over on the ride, the Lightning tour bus. He's just like, we gotta watch it again. And he'd laugh, we'd all laugh. It's like, again, watch it, we'd all laugh. And,
How fun.
Get people, hey, check this out, laugh. It's like, But I mean, the H.P. Lovecraft thing is something that Cliff Burton and I were very into, that we got James into, and James is really into H.P. Lovecraft. With Metallica, we always have to be careful that we're not, connected to something that's kind of like, could pull us off our trajectory, We don't want to be known as like, a horror band, even though it would be great, We don't want to be known as like a coffee band, even though we drink lots of coffee, you know what I mean? Yeah. We just want to be known for what we do. But, having said that, Cliff and I, we were huge horror movie fans. The first time I saw Evil Dead was literally like three weeks after I joined the band, and we all went to the drive-in to see this crazy movie called Evil Dead, 2 cars. And I remember seeing it at a drive-in in New Jersey and just thinking it's the greatest thing in the world, Cliff and I.
I've always wondered, because you coming up with your parts and your note choice and stuff. I mean, all of that stuff is.
Oh yeah, yeah. Me personally,
yeah.
I mean, I just have a propensity to just always go dark and minor and pick notes with a lot of tension, and just like that flatted fifth, the minor third, going to the ninth, it's just there's all these formulas that I use and I can't get away from, because that's what I hear in my head. Mm-hmm. I try to write happy stuff. Even when I try to write happy stuff, there's just like a weird thing to it that's like tension filled. That manifests itself in other ways too. I can't listen to music that's overly happy, like it doesn't resonate with me, because I know it's not my reality. It's just not what my inner self is. Yeah. If I listen to dark music or, tension-filled music, something happens and I relate inside. And my music is like that too. I mean, it's just like, but don't get me wrong. I'm not saying happy music sucks. I love all types of music. Sure. It just has to be good and well put together and thought out.
When did you start collecting memorabilia? What was the first thing you got?
Well, when I was a kid, I was, just buying that stuff, as a kid. Around the time of like I said, Ride the Lightning, I started getting a little bit of some disposable income, and then I started right back up again, but full force. I have a massive collection now, and my collection is, in my own opinion, too cool to just like keep to myself. I have to share it with people. Hence, the book, the museum shows and whatnot, because this stuff is just great stuff. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who would appreciate it just as much as I would, maybe more. I don't know. And so that is a real kind of like, determining factor in how I collect nowadays. I only collect the coolest stuff that I can find. If I collected everything I wanted to collect, I wouldn't have room for it all. So I have to be a little bit more selective in what I buy these days.
In the opening of the show of this episode, I referred to you as a patron saint of the horror community, because the Zombie Band did a show at Hollywood Forever Cemetery for a Johnny Ramone tribute memorial thing, and you had some of your collection there, and I hadn't seen it in person. And since then, it's toured museums. You bring so much joy to people, allowing people to go see that stuff. yeah, it's all dark and whatever, but like there's so much joy in those artifacts that for you to be so giving with your time and with your collection like that is such an amazing thing. Do you have a favorite piece, and what was it like seeing that stuff travel?
Well, you know, it's a little stressful seeing that stuff travel, but you know, on the other side of that is it's great knowing that people, like you said, are just so stoked to see this stuff. Yeah. I mean, I'm stoked to see this stuff, and I've seen this stuff like a million times. I'm still stoked to see it, and I see other people who've never seen it before, and like them losing their minds kind of causes me to lose my mind with them. I'm so happy, you know, that they're so happy. I don't know which one is my favorite, but I can give you a top 3 for sure.
Okay.
Starting with, you know, the outfit that Boris Karloff wore during the Black Cat, his actual outfit. I know, amazing. Still can't believe I actually have that. I mean, I feel so blessed and lucky, and also so blessed and lucky that it still survives, you know, almost 100 years after the fact, or 90 years after the fact, and we're all able to still see it, you know, observe it, you know. The thing is this item called the Nebularium, and it's a round mirror that was used in the Frankenstein movie, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Mask of Fu Manchu, and then like a lot of like later movies like The Man with Two Brains, Young Frankenstein also, and that's a very, very cool piece that I have. The third piece would be the Trilogy of Terror fetish doll.
Oh,
and you know what that is? I could tell, but we should probably explain what it is for our people out there in television land.
Yeah.
In the 70s, there was this made-for-TV movie called Trilogy of Terror with Karen Black, and it was 3 stories, a trilogy, and one of them was called I think the Cooney Fetish Doll. What it was this woman, and she had gotten this doll that I can't remember she was supposed to look after or she just got, and it was a special doll from Africa, and it had a gold chain around its waist, and when she put it on the table, the gold chain fell off its waist, and that gold chain was the protective charm for that little god. The next scene is Karen Black walking over to the table, and all you see on the table is the gold chain and no Cooney Fetish Doll. And then the whole rest of the story is this little doll about this big attacking Karen Black with a steak knife.
Violently, yes.
And it is so violent. Yep. And it's just so creepy, and this thing is unrelenting. And at the end, you know, the ending is great. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah.
But you can go on YouTube and definitely check it out. Trilogy of Terror, Karen Black. Is it Zuni Fetish Doll or Cooney Fetish?
Zuni.
Zuni Fetish Doll. Yeah.
Made by Dan Curtis, who created Dark Shadows.
Yes, Dark Shadows, and a ton of is it Outer Limits or Twilight Zone episodes? I can't remember, but yeah, and he was also married to Barbara Shelley.
We'll be back with more from our buddy Kirk Hammett right after this message.
In the dark of the night, something strange is going on.
You see that movie, Night of the Living Dead? Sure. They ship those bodies. Well, say hello.
The dead have risen from the grave.
Mister, there's 100 of those things out there.
How many did you say?
100?
And now the question is, how do we get them back into the ground?
Bert, Frank, we have a little problem.
4 left, 10 right.
It's all over everything! Stupid asshole! Watch your tongue, boy, if you like this job! Like this job!
Brain.
puzzle. Because technically, you're not alive.
Why do you eat people?
Not people. Brains.
How do you kill something that's already dead?
Well, how do I know, Fred? I don't know. Let me think.
It's not a bad question, Bert. In that movie, they destroyed the brain to kill him. Is that what they did?
The brains, right.
Brains!
Brain! The brain! I hit the brain! Oh! Get it off! 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 Get it off!
The military is nervous.
How was your day?
Usual crap.
The police are confused.
Send more cops.
It worked in the movie! Well, it ain't working now, Fred. In the movie line?
It's not a bad question, Bert. It's not a bad question, Bert. It's not a bad question, Bert.
The return of the living dead.
Every band has a secret weapon. Somebody that's driving the ship with a sometimes quiet, yet powerful hand. Emerging from Queens in 1981, Anthrax hit the local metal scene with a vengeance and soon found themselves touring the tri-state area alongside the likes of Overkill and a new band called Metallica. After an extended courtship by guitarist Scott Ian, Charlie Benante joined the ranks as the band's drummer in September of 1983 and would eventually assume the role as one of the group's primary songwriters. While earning a spot in the hearts of metalheads worldwide with albums such as Among the Living, Persistence of Time, and The Sound of White Noise, the band would go on to sell over 10 million records and solidify themselves as one of the big four bands of thrash metal. This is Charlie Benante of Anthrax.
I was playing drums when I was born. That's the way my mom and my sisters tell the story. And my sisters would play records and I would play the songs that they were playing. But then as I got older, I started to pick out things that really appealed to me, drummers that had, wow, there's something there. Like, of course, the Kiss Explosion, you know, they were one of the first groups that, man, that was it. This is what I'm doing in life. I don't care. I was playing drums like all the time, but I needed to learn how to play another instrument so I could convey what I was, you know, hearing in my head. My mom would get the Sears catalog delivered. There was this copy of a Les Paul that she got me for Christmas. And I made myself play guitar every day and just, you know, figured it out. I would just spend, you know, hours indoors just drawing comic books, and that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to either be a comic book artist or an artist that did Mad Magazine. I met Scott. I would see him and the ex-bass player Danny Looker at the same shows. At the time, Scott had this band called Anthrax, and they were thinking about removing the guitar player and the drummer. We met, and they came over to the Bronx to do the audition. And it was great. It felt so good to play with these guys because they were serious about what they were doing. And at the time, I was semi-serious because I really wanted to do this art thing. But then this happened, and I said, if this happened, like, it was such an organic thing that happened, and if it was gonna take off, then I was gonna go with it. And that's exactly what happened. So Johnny used to have this record store. It was in a flea market. We would always give Johnny demos but he wasn't sure. And then we did the last demo, and he loved it. So he sent us to do 2 songs with Ross the Boss from Manowar. And that worked out great. We did a song that we just wrote called Soldiers of Metal, and he put the single out, and it was awesome. He started to build this roster on this indie label, and then it took off really big. So our first show was opening for Crocus and Blackfoot, and it was awesome. So I was hooked. But after our first tour, you know, we were in a van going across country, and probably the best thing ever happened to us was in that van, because we knew when we came back who was going to make it and who wasn't going to make it, and that was the big test. And on the way back, we made a decision that we needed to look for a new vocalist. So we wrote the record Spreading the Disease, and we had no singer at the time. And then Carl Kennedy, who produced Fistful of Metal, was also working on Spreading the Disease. He knew of a singer, and Joey came in, and we immediately knew that was the guy. I went home back to the Bronx, and I took a rough mix of the album with me and listened to it on the way home. And I just felt something was missing. And I went home and wrote this new song, and it was called AIR, and I was so stoked about it. It turned out to be the first song on the record. And I think that was the bridge from Spreading the Disease to the next record, which would be Among the Living. That was it. Thrash metal was starting. The tour was great. You know, we were starting to see the world. And then once we would get home from a tour, I would go to Scott's house, start to just collaborate and start, you know, write the album. And Among was written really quick, because a lot of it was on tour, but a lot of it was done just meeting up and doing it. We knew we had something special because the songs weren't like the ones on Spreading. Each one of them, we felt was like, wow, this is a great tune, you know, and we have a bunch of them. So we were excited about that record. It was a great time, and that's why the title is State of Euphoria, because that's how we were. We just couldn't believe what we had achieved in just a few years, but it wasn't ready to come out. We weren't finished with it, but we had to be finished because we had this huge tour that we could not pass up. I just wish we had a little more time, because it would have been a different record, I think, if we had to. And then when we started writing the next record, we had the big fire. We lost a lot of equipment. And it was starting to become a darker time for us. And we wanted to take our time on this next one. That's how the title came about. It came about from like my love of Salvatore Dali, The Persistence of Memory, that painting. And the reason why time came in is because time was just going by so fast for us that we needed to stop it, you know, but it was just always there. And that's how, it's just the persistence of time. After we released that record, we released this record called Attack of the Killer Bees. We had some mutual friends that worked for Def Jam and Rush Management. At that time, Scott Koenig had given us some Public Enemy shirts. Chuck saw that and name-checked us in this song called Bring the Noise. Bring the Noise to us would be our real attempt to do a real crossover with rap and metal. Chuck D turned it down. He didn't want to do it. He said, I think it's repetition. I already did Bring the Noise, you know? And then we recorded it and then sent it to him, and then he loved it. We did the video for Bring the Noise. We had such a great time doing it that I remember sitting on the bus, and I said to Chuck, you know, this was great. And he's like, this is a great experience. I said, we should take this on tour. And he's like, let's do it. Boom, before you know it, there were dates booked. And we were in a weird place because we were not happy with our singer at this point. Things were getting weird in the band, and we ended up replacing him. Always loved John's voice. I had this song, which would become the song Only. That was the first song that John sang. And dude, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about when that first happened. It was so exciting. We also had a new label, Elektra, and that was another great thing that happened. We were starting to, you know, find our second act, so to speak, and that record ended up selling a lot of records. After the White Noise record, It was a big success for Elektra. And what was about to happen was kind of like a coup at the label. They dropped a ton of bands, and we were one of those bands that got dropped. Around that time was like 1995, 94, and the word metal was becoming really bad. We were barely, keeping our head above water at that time, but we were still doing what we do. Around that time, I was really getting influenced by a lot of European metal, and really helped inspire me to write and make this record, which would become We've Come For You All. John is killer on that record. Rob Caggiano was brought into the band, great guitar player. He actually helped a lot to get the momentum back in the band too. That record to me sounds like Act 3. Around that time, we decided to do this reunion tour, which for me it was a great thing because it was repairing old relationships. We really enjoyed being around Joey again. Joey was different. There's no reason why you should hold a grudge with anyone, for years. It's just so ridiculous. We make great things together. We should continue it. That's what happened. And worship music was the product of that. Throughout all of our years, if there's one thing that we all do is we worship music. Everybody's really happy with each other. We made it through a whole album cycle. That momentum carried into the next record, which would be For All Kings. This next record will be a continuation of that and some of the older albums. That's where this is going. I'm really happy with some of the new songs. They're different. They don't sound like anything we've done. That's the weirdest thing for me. 40 years, it's like, really? Are you sure about that? We did things in a very New York type of way. We fought and we just persevered. If someone said you can't do it, then we did it anyway. It's rock and roll.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be sure to get one of our 3 official Silver Shamrock masks. You too can be a scary witch, a spooky skeleton, or a jolly jack-o'-lantern. Be sure to have even more fun with the official Silver Shamrock Witch Board. See what fortune awaits you this Halloween. And don't forget, they glow in the dark. Each sold separately, only from Trick or Treat Studios.
Welcome back, metalheads. All right. Do you think horror audiences have changed a lot, and can you get with new horror?
I spend most of my time just like checking out new horror. Over the course of my life, I've seen most of the stuff from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I wouldn't say most, but a good chunk. I like to think I've seen most of the movies that matter.
Yeah.
And so nowadays, I just literally just like cruise around trying to figure out what great new horror films to watch. And there's a lot of great ones. And I've been saying this for a while. This is we're living in the new golden era of horror. Mm-hmm. There are so many great movies coming out, lots of magazines. The genre itself is just grown so much, and it's grown demographically. When I first started collecting this stuff, when I was a kid, it was just, a bunch of my friends. And then when I got back into it, later on, it was just me and my friends and a bunch of super nerdy guys, you know, pocket protector guys, you know, until about 20 years ago. You know, I'd start going to, you know, I would go to horror conventions or comic conventions and start seeing more women, more girls, you know, and it was weird because it kind of coincided with how heavy metal started seeing more women, you know. I saw the genre just kind of open up demographically. And, you know, it was a really amazing thing to see. And it's only gotten bigger since then. And so I really think, you know, this is the golden age of horror.
As we're taping this, the Misfits are probably walking on stage in Chicago at Riot Fest right now. What a beautiful thing. Here we are in 2022. One of our favorite bands ever is about to just get up and destroy, probably in front of 100,000 people. Some kid tonight is going to hear Vampira for the first time. That gives me hope.
Yeah. And you know, I have to say, Glenn Danzig and the guys in the Misfits have been flying the flag for this genre the entire time. And they've been indoctrinating people through their music this entire time. And I love them for that, you know. They are just raking people in with their music, you know, raking people into the genre. I can just picture it, you know, some like 12-year-old kid who comes with his dad, doesn't know anything about, you know, the Misfits and sees them and it's just like, wow, you know, and then goes home and picks up an album and sees the album titles and then asks his dad, what are these album titles? And his dad goes, oh, those are horror movies.
Right.
Boom, right there.
What's Horror Hotel?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Give that a Google.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, the Misfits are like, you know, a gateway drug to horror.
Well put. Well put, yeah. I know you've been working on some new solo music. What can you tell us about that?
Well, you know, it always seems like I have some sort of like a musical project or some sort of like project or something that I'm doing, you know. It's And so right now, I have a writing partner, and we've created a story in 6 chapters. And the name of the story is called I Have to Get Rid of This Guitar I Found. It's about this cursed guitar. And when each chapter comes out, there's a little musical accompaniment that goes along with it that I did, which is an interpretation of one of the characters in the story's experience. And you can say that, like, you know, I'm soundtracking a book, chapter by chapter, and that's what that's kind of what's going on right now. And the music is very, very simple. It's meant to be atmospheric. It's meant to be field recordings. You know, it's just me with an acoustic guitar interpreting some things that are within, you know, the scopes of what the story is. And it's pretty cool because it's something that I didn't have to really think a lot about, you know, because I just put out a solo album called Portals. All that music is heavily influenced by film, all of it. I could pretty much say all of it is influenced by film. The first track, Maiden the Monster, is kind of a representation of the silent era of horror. The second track on there, The Djinn, kind of is a representation of 40s and 50s horror and how, you know, the sci-fi genre kind of came and like turned things around and made things kind of different. High Plains Drifter is actually, you know, about more so about, you know, 60s cinema in general. And it's called High Plains Drifter because the movie is a ghost story, but you don't really realize it until the very end. And then the last track is called The Incantation, and it's just like this long, epic track that goes through all these permutations and, you know, has this big climactic ending. And to me, it is like an incantation, and where you start slow with you know, an intention, you know, a premeditation that just kind of like builds and builds in intensity and focus and intention until, you know, something happens, and I feel like, you know, the song is a great representation of like an incantation of an entity, and so that all that stuff is all influenced by horror and film, and it's all instrumental, and I had so much fun doing it, and it just kind of happened, you know, and it's really, really easy for me to compose music in that way, because I've been, as probably you are, I've been living in it, you know, 24 hours a day. So it's just like going to the cupboard and like going, oh, I have some of this and some of this and some of this and some of this, and like throw it together, kind of having a pretty good idea of what the results are gonna come out like. And so, you know, I just, if there's anything that I can say that is like really deeply influenced by the genre, it's the solo album I just put out, for sure.
Fantastic.
But I'm always writing something. I'm always doing something. Always writing riffs. Always like chasing that riff. Always chasing that riff that's just gonna, like, when I play it, it just like changes my whole mental state.
Yeah.
You know, and I know you know what I'm talking about. All musicians do. When you like find a piece of music and you start playing it, and you're just so stoked, and it changes your entire musical state, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
Speaking of guitar solos, it has been so cool seeing Master of Puppets get all of this love.
Yeah.
These new fans.
Yeah.
I think it's just the greatest news of the year.
Oh, you know, it couldn't have been a better thing for myself personally to be involved musically with Stranger Things in that way, you know, because I love Stranger Things. I think it's the best thing out there right now.
Absolutely quality
you know,
television.
Just hands down the best horror thing out there right now.
Yeah.
And it came as a surprise to us, you know. They put it in there, and then they came to us and said, oh, by the way, we're using this track. And we're like, yeah, of course, yeah, whatever you want. And when it actually all went down, we were all very surprised at the reaction, because it re-entered the charts again around that time. Was it June or July or whenever it was? It re-entered the charts in the States, and it re-entered the charts in both the UK and Germany. And it's crazy because that song came out in 1986, and it's just now getting its final due, or the due that it should be getting.
Incredible.
Well, no, that's not true, but you know,
Yeah.
But it's getting all this new recognition. And it's a real shock to all of us. And it couldn't happen in a better format.
Yeah.
You know, just
I agree.
straight there in the middle of the coolest horror series presently, you know.
The most perfect vehicle it could have arrived in.
Yeah.
It's just perfect.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
inspiring, it's fun, it
Yeah.
makes the metal community fun, and
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful thing.
And, you know, it's opening up that song to a whole new demographic of people who wouldn't have otherwise heard it, like younger kids, you know, and older people too. And so it's pretty interesting to see, you know.
It's so cool to see people so inspired
Yeah.
around the band and around that album, and that song's just so great.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's do a quick top 10. What did you prepare for us? What is this list?
Top 10 horror bands.
Top 10 horror bands. Here we go.
Of course, the first band that ever comes to the imagination when talking about horror or music in general is Black Sabbath. They're the kings, you know. Also, Merciful Fate, you know, King Diamond. Seeing a Merciful Fate show is like seeing some satanic movie, you know.
Yeah.
I love it. The Misfits, of course, you know, like I said, they're the gateway band into the horror genre. The Cramps.
Great one.
You know, I was a big Cramps fan. I loved Poison Ivy's guitar playing. I loved Lux Interior as a front man. I mean, it's just like Angel Witch, a new wave of British heavy metal band, and great. Had a song called The Gorgon, and really, really great song. Slayer, you know, everyone gets that instantly. I mean, their music is just like a horror soundtrack to hell. Samhain, or as I should say it properly, Samhain.
Yeah.
The first album, Initium, is great, particularly the song The Shift, which is about turning into a werewolf. Love that. Iron Maiden.
Oh,
The first album, you know, I saw that song titled Phantom of the Opera. I literally ran home and put that track on and was blown away. And then when Killers came out, and I saw Murders in the Rue Morgue, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
They're thinking about me.
Yeah, they wrote this for me. Witchfinder General. They're a little known, a new wave of British heavy metal band, and they were so great. They had this one song called Burn the Witch, and it's just like so great. And Sisters of Mercy. You know, not so much, you know, having a foot in the horror genre, as their music just sounds like a, you know, soundtrack to just one big long horror film.
Yeah, absolutely. Make a Halloween playlist out of that.
Yeah, now that's a good Halloween playlist right there. Evil.
I cannot thank you enough for being here and for our Halloween special. There was nobody more perfect. So I hope you're ready to roll that sleeping bag out, because
hey, bro,
might see some weird shit tonight.
You know, I am so glad, you know, that we had this conversation, because I can talk about this stuff for years.
Will you come back and hang out with us again?
Hella.
Oh, awesome.
I'm bringing that word back. Hella. Bring it back from hell. Hella.
Hella. Have a hella Halloween, my brother.
You too, bro.
Thank you. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for spending your Halloween with Mr. Monster himself, Kirk Hammett. We love you. We'll see you guys next time. Happy Halloween. Well, Monster Heads, we've reached that part of the evening. I'd like to thank our guest, Kirk Hammett of Metallica, for stopping by. He's kind of the ultimate trick-or-treater, if you ask me, because like his horror collection, it's kind of like a big bag of candy, and he gets it. The coolest thing about all that collecting is coming home and getting to share with your friends, right? On his way out, he was kind enough to sign a copy of Master of Puppets and left a few other goodies. And if you'd like to win this bundle, send a letter with your name, email, and mailing address to the P.O. box below. Winners will be selected at random and announced on Gibson TV at a later date. Well, Kirk's got the projector fired up in the theater, and we're about to start our double feature tonight, so I gotta run. Until next time, thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.